Okay, this is the weekend analysis. It is September 22nd, and we're looking at the euro dollar daily time frame. So basically, and we looked at this a few times last week, this daily chart, and we could see that this was most of what was causing our problem if we were to step back and look at the bigger picture. The problem that I was having, not necessarily any losing trades, for example, but the just the inability or the lack of the ability to see any clear direction. So if I go to the 1 hour time frame, you'll remember this one if you were in the chat room. Well, we spent quite a bit of time bring up this 1 hour chart, reviewing this sideways S-shaped pattern that continued through here for most of last week. And I mentioned that as these price swings get tighter and tighter, one inside of another, of course, eventually it's going to break out there. But for the most part, most of the week, I just stayed away from it. So if we were to go back to the daily time frame here for the euro dollar, try to get an idea of what I would do right on the open, I would do nothing for the most part, unless something happens, of course, right after the open. So it could be maybe an hour or two afterwards that there could be, let's say, a bounce off of the support area. You can see that, there was a W bottom pattern here that developed. It's a little interesting, but it's there. Not exactly the structure that I would prefer to trade and comfortably or reliably expect price to move back to up to some of these extension targets. But we've got another one. We've got a couple of them. So I'm going to go ahead and reverse and take off this Fibonacci tool that we were using, looking for the reversals, right? The bounces off of that support and seeing how high they were holding. Now let's just take a look at, and we're just going to start leaving it here from this point on, that low, this high, and we see price bouncing off the 618. So there's a couple of different ways. This is exactly what I would do if I was looking at a 1 hour chart. So if I don't get a good solid candle off the 618 that gives me confirmation where I could comfortably expect that price is going to resume its uptrend in this case, right? If we're looking at the new A low, the B high, because this looks like that's what that was, right? A retest of that support level. At least for the time being, it looks like it's holding. So if tomorrow's candle ends up being a bullish candle, which it could, right? It's just retesting off the 618, or it could go a little bit lower. Now, if this thing collapses, of course, we're not going to go long at all. But what I'm getting at is, in order for me to see or to expect price is going to go back up and take out the B high, let's say a daily candle above the B high, which could happen and it could print a continuation breakout trade, I still need to see the candle pattern, right? The bullish candle pattern developing down here. So again, it still looks sideways as of the close. Remember, you might be looking at this maybe 3, 4, 5 hours after the market opens, and then there's going to be an obvious signal, and I don't have that just yet because the market's not open. So again, all I've got is the information that we have, and as of the close here on the daily time frame, this is the euro dollar, it just looks like prices retested the 618, and a couple of different times we can see the initial move, and then again the following day that bullish move, and then it just kept going sideways, and then Friday we had the retest. So it's really difficult to say at this point. I wouldn't necessarily be selling it or ready to go long until I get a candle on the 1 hour time frame. A specific candle setup is what I'm talking about. Something like, if I was to go with, let's say, last week's low, maybe it could be a significant bounce off of last week's low. Now, we were watching this right, I would say, the last few hours into the chat room on Friday. So you know that if you're in the chat room, if you're a chat room member, I prefer not to get stuck into trades that I have to hold through the weekend. So we could see that this bounce was developing at this point, and I went to the reversals page and the template that I have for it, and we could see that there was basically some confirmation. There's a bullish move right there, closes at about 1.1017, but at that point it was pretty obvious that it wasn't likely to go to any of the expected targets that I would normally trade to. So if it's not going to do that, there's no reason for me to get into the trade thinking that for the last 2 hours I'm going to see it rally. Doesn't usually happen. Sometimes it does. Most of the times it doesn't, and it could go sideways and flat right into the move. The biggest move in the day was obviously earlier in the day down to the downside, retesting that support level from last week. So I would have got stuck getting into a trade on Friday if I would have traded off this bounce. Now it may come back and retest this level, and if it looks like the 618 on the daily time frame is holding, and this prints a bullish move somewhere off of resistance again, another retest, I would consider then at that point trading it, but I don't know how long into the Asian session that's going to take. So let's go ahead and take a look at the dollar yen. We've been trading the dollar yen quite a bit and then paying attention to it over the past few weeks because we could clearly see this bottom pattern here developing, and the bullish Tech 1 trade on the weekly chart, all of the yen weakness that we were expecting up like for the last 3.5 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks. But I mentioned last week that eventually it looked like it was going to reach a point where we were going to start seeing some divergence and possibly a retracement. Now, whether it's a full reversal and price creates a new downtrend for, let's say, the next month, which could happen, but I don't know that yet. I don't have confirmation of that. I still want to confirm that I have a new A high and a B low. If we go over here to the Japanese yen futures, this is the daily time frame, and we're seeing more Japanese yen strength here at this point. So you can see volume levels are starting to pick back up over the last couple of days, last week, Thursday and Friday. And at this point, we've got to pay attention to see if we're going to, see more to the upside. So again, we're going to be looking for some solid indication that this is likely to create some kind of temporary high and price is going to move lower. So again, Japanese yen futures, when we see price moving up, that's yen strength. So that means dollar yen will be moving lower. Dollar yen strength is prices moving to the downside on the dollar yen chart. Might look a little bit confusing at first, but it's the exact opposite, but we still get that confirmation there. There is a key low from last week. That was after that gap with the Saudi oil strikes, the drone strikes. And then it might close below that low and then continue a little bit lower. It might bounce off of that support level. So we've got to be really careful here because it could just be a retracement day for Monday, and then maybe Tuesday and Wednesday it might resume to the downside. It's really difficult again to say at this point without confirming that this is a new A high and we have a solidified B low at that point, where I could then measure the retracement and then start looking for more clues and signs that it's probably going to come back down for a month. Sometimes you see that. You might see a trending move that will last for a whole month and then it stops. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it just goes sideways and choppy. That's also a possibility. So we're going to have to really assess what Monday night looks like when I do the 5 o'clock, after the 5 o'clock rollover update. And I'm going to look quickly here at the pound dollar. So the pound dollar, again, printing a reversal candle, but it's like the first one up here that looks like it just might hold. So this one is closed. If you look at this, this is Friday's candle. This one closed more than, or at least 60% the length of that bullish candle there. So we've got a ways to go to see if this one's going to turn around and come back a little bit lower at this point. And we'll start looking for opportunities in the chat room at 3 a.m. New York time.